Okay, I'm here with David. I'm Lucas, and we're here to talk about race in America. And David's been kind enough to volunteer, and he understands this is going to be put on the web. And Dave's also multicultural. So let me give it to Dave. So Dave, how was it growing up? What's your heritage?
Okay, so my heritage is it's a mixed one. So my mom's white, my dad's black. On my mom's side of the family, her dad immigrated here from Norway, and her mother comes from a long line of people in America, be it pioneering, and I just know they originated in Virginia. But on my dad's side, he's black. I've never met him, so to speak. Like, I talked to him on the phone. I know he was adopted, and there's not much known about his history outside he's a black American. I know he lived here in Los Angeles for a while, and then he moved to the Midwest, and has lived in a few different states out there. But growing up, I lived with my mom and my stepfather and their kids. My mom's blonde-haired, blue-eyed. Stepfather's blonde-haired, blue-eyed. Their kids are also blonde-haired, blue-eyed. So I was very different than them from the start.
Right. And what was your relationship like within that household?
So my relationship in the household was good. Like, I got along with my brother for the most part. My family dynamic was a little bit strange in that my sister didn't really grow up with us. She ended up growing up with my aunt for some reason. I don't quite understand why. My aunt I don't talk to, and she doesn't quite understand why. She just took on the burden of that. But, I got along with them. I get along with my stepfather just fine. My mom, I don't get along with the best, but I do talk to her. Growing up, there were some racial things that happened. There was things where people would get upset, and I'd be called a nigger, whether it be by my stepfather or my brother. Fights would break out. There'd be some violence. And I was living that stereotype of the angry black man. Like, that came out, and they would be fearful of me. Like, that happened. Let's see. On my stepfather's side, so he was adopted. And his adopted mother, who was like a grandmother of mine growing up, I know she referred to me as the little nigger boy. So I didn't quite like her too much. My mom's side of the family, her family loves me. So I've never had any issues there. Yeah. So outside of just my stepfather's side, things were pretty good.
And we were talking once about your mother would try to embrace black culture in the household for you.
Thank you. Growing up, I can remember things that my mom used to make as far as foods. And like we talked about earlier, this came from a good place, but when I talk about it, when I think about it, it's very strange. So she would make me foods that were typically what would be black American cuisine, possibly soul food cuisine. I can think of times she'd make me some kind of fried catfish, and everybody else would get served chicken or something. When it would be holiday time, I'd get served the gizzards of the chicken or the turkey, as well as the hearts of the chicken or the turkey. That wasn't really offered to my siblings. That wasn't offered to anybody else that was in attendance. And she felt that she needed to instill this sense of black culture in me, and that's her way of doing it. Even though everything surrounding me growing up, I grew up in a white family in upper middle class income in a white neighborhood. Everything about me didn't have that typical black Americanness that we see or hear about.
What about in your neighborhood? You're raised in Los Angeles in an upper middle class white neighborhood. How was it in that neighborhood for you in the interaction with the kids growing up?
Okay, so my neighborhood is a weird neighborhood. I'm not sure if it was upper middle class as a neighborhood. It's a small town, a number of trailer parks in that town, but also a number of affluent people in that town. It's a very mixed area, and it was a very small area. But everybody was predominantly white. And growing up in that town, it was known, like it was definitely made known to me that I was black. Like growing up, outside of the things that my mom did throughout time, like I never had anything that said like, David, you're black, and that didn't have any meaning to it. But in my neighborhood and going to school and hanging out with people that I've hung out with, riding bikes or whatever, it was obvious that I was black, and it seemed to be like very negative. So on the streets, I'd be called things like a nigger sometimes. They'd refer to me as like the black kid or something like that, or the brown kid, whatever. People, I guess, look ambiguously, so they can tell. But when I was younger, I had hair. It was curly. It was a little easier to tell. And yeah, I mean, so it was definitely known. Also, the kids around my town, they call each other like, "Oh, you're such a nigger," this and that to each other in a derogatory way. As a white kid saying that to another white kid, but they say it as like a put down, or like, "Oh, you're so black." Like it's just a general put down. I don't know if I was really affected because I also didn't identify with being like this black person, or that it was like a bad thing to be a black person. I didn't really have any around me. I can think about my elementary school. There was maybe 3 of us total in my attendance there. Yeah, it wasn't until like middle school that I encountered like other black people, and even then I didn't really feel a part of it. I learned like at a young age that like because I was mixed, I was too dark to be white, even though like culturally and everything I grew up white, but I was also like too light to be black and too culturally white to be black. Like I didn't fit in with the black community that was in this town next over, just due to everything I had, you know. And I grew up upper middle class, and a lot of the other kids in the black neighborhood didn't identify with that either, you know.
So you had the right clothes, you had the white clothes, and there were new clothes, and the right bike, and it was a new bike, and so forth.
Right. I didn't have the off-brand stuff. I had the name brand stuff.
You had the social economic advantages of being white, but
yeah, I definitely had that. I had anything I wanted, basically. Like PlayStation came out, I got it. I had Sega Genesis as a kid. I had bikes, I rode skateboards, we built ramps and stuff like that, all the white people stuff that people talk about. I grew up and I did that.
right.
I listened, like my first CD that my grandfather gave me was like In Sync. I didn't get like whatever Boys to Men or whatever,
right.
You know, would be the black equivalent of that.
NWA.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Right.
You know, whatever it is. That wasn't my initial introduction, you know.
And how did being called or hearing somebody referred to you as a nigger, how did that, like, what was the, how did you digest that? Like, what was the, you know, did that bring out hostility? Or is because you didn't see yourself that way, it was water off a duck's back? What did it?
I know that when I was really young, I didn't even understand what that meant. I was told, I want to say by my mom, like a little later, like kind of what was going on with that, and I knew that it wasn't a good thing, you know. So I do recall times when I get angry, you know. Like I said, that led to me attacking family members. That led to a couple things going on in the neighborhood. Like some people I'd attack. You know, sometimes though I wouldn't think anything of it, and I just kind of laugh. Sometimes there's like when I was talking about the kids in the neighborhood calling each other that, and they're 2 white people. I'd laugh because of like this context that they were saying it in, but also because I didn't identify with what they were talking about.
Right.
Like, I didn't identify as this nigger thing they were talking about. So it didn't affect me in that way. You know,
right.
As I got older, things started affecting me differently. But at the time, yeah, not much.
So as you got older, how did that manifest out in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, so as I got older in life, it just became more apparent to me, like, that I was different. Like, throughout school, kids would ask me if I was adopted. I'd have parent-teacher day or whatever at school. People would ask where my parents were, you know, and like my mom would be there, my stepdad would be there, they'd both be there, and my brother and sister, and I looked absolutely nothing like them. And yeah, so that was weird. They were always just kind of thrown off, like, where is his family, you know? But I was with my family. At least, you know, what I call my family, what is my family. And then, but yeah, just interactions with kids and their families. So, for example, if I go to some of my friends' houses that I knew from the neighborhood, and I went over there for dinner, like there were times when I'd be at their house, we'd be in the living room, we'd be hanging out, watching the news, and something would happen, and it was like a racial thing that happened on the news, and I could think of this one time my friend's mom said, like, oh, these fucking niggers, this and that, because there was a black person on TV that had done something supposedly, and then I remember she looked at me and kind of like, she just kind of stuttered a little bit and stopped, and then she tried to explain to me that like white people could be niggers too. Just so that she could feel okay with herself, I think. Like, I wasn't offended. Like, I knew that white people talk like that. And I just happened to be a black person in their house when they said it. And it was just so natural to her. I don't know.
As a white person, I'll tell you, that's one of the most common things that whites use in order to rationalize the use of that word.
Yeah.
And the other one is, well, they call each other that. So were you aware of that sort of stuff as you were growing up?
I was aware that people spoke that way. I wasn't aware of the amount, how like hatred based it was really though. I didn't quite understand that. I understand people use these words. I didn't quite understand a lot of the feelings that were sometimes attached to those words though.
Did you sense that it was real or like true hatred? Bigotry rather than racism? In other words, just not understanding somebody else rather than really thinking they were superior because they were white? Or like, what was your experience with that?
So some of it is bigotry. Some of it's bigotry. Some of it is just people needing to find a sense of pride in something. Like I said, it's a predominantly white area, and you know, some of the kids and their families come from these, like, I don't want to call them gangs. I don't know if white people have gangs as gangs are defined, but they would be what's similar, very, very similar to a gang.
It's called Congress.
Anyway, so there's these white supremacist groups that, I guess you can call them, right? And they talk about this stuff, that they hated blacks and they hated Mexicans and they hated Asians and all this kind of stuff, right? And they hated Jews and they called them kikes. Like, that was thrown around a lot. And I hung out with these people, though, which was very strange to me. Like, that they could actually feel that way and then have me hang out with them without me being in fear of my life. So, like, that was one thing that I noticed, that I just realized, like, maybe this is just a bunch of BS and they just talk this way because it feels good to, like, feel important. I have no idea. But, like, there was that in my neighborhood, and then my uncle, who spent a lot of time with me growing up, and he was, like, married in from an aunt. They divorced. Like, he's not biologically related at all. It's just kind of like a through marriage kind of thing. And I mean, he had spent numerous terms in prison, and he has all of the prison tattoos of what like a white prison gang would have, you know, with clovers and swastikas and all that stuff, and it's all over him on his face, his arms, and everything. And I mean, I spent a lot of time with him growing up. I mean, he taught me how to shave my head, like all kinds of stuff. You know, he taught me quite a bit. And like with him, I never felt any kind of hatred, you know. And he seemed to like me, even though he had all these symbols that symbolized everything that would like identify someone as like a hate-filled person, right? And there was another black kid in the neighborhood. His name was Chad, that my uncle used to hang out with. And so I would see these people that were supposedly scary hanging out with their enemies without any conflict. So really, like, that had no real weight on me in the real world when I interacted with people.
So I just want to wrap up with the word, because you know it gets a lot of press. Tell me your as a man of color, what is your opinion about that word?
That word being the word nigger, the N-word.
That's correct, nigger.
Yeah. Like, for me, it's largely in context. It depends how it's being used. People obviously want to use that word for some reason. I don't quite understand why there's the appeal to everybody. I know in like rap music it's there. I guess it sounds kind of cool when people walk up and like, yo, what's up, my nigga? Just do that kind of deal. I guess it's cool. You know, I grew up with white people, and they would do that too. They talk to each other like that too. I never really said anything that made them think it wasn't okay to do that, and they did it like when they talk to each other. They listen to rap music too. Like I could see they'd be like rapping the songs and it was whatever. But like other people use it in like more hate-filled way. Like if they were just saying "fuck you," you know what I mean? It's like if anybody says something to you in that way, like you're gonna get upset. I hope.
For sure.
What I mean? You're gonna feel that.
How does it fit in your own personal vocabulary?
So in my personal vocabulary, it's rare. It's really rare. Like I don't really find many reasons to say it. Culturally, like I grew up in a certain way in a certain neighborhood, so there are times when I talk like in my head in that same like bigoted way, like oh these niggers this and that, and it doesn't matter what fucking color they are. Like I just say the word because I lack anything else to really describe the feeling I have, and I think that's largely just me being a product of my environment. There's also times like I'll just be rap, you know, I just say it in the song lyrics say it, and I say it. There's very few times that it's like it has anything to do with anybody's color, and it's not a word that I regularly use. But I do see it on the media all the time, and even if it's not the word nigger or nigga, like I guess there's a big deal if you use a hard R or a soft A or whatever the fuck it is. But like people will switch out letters, like they'll be like Nibba. I saw this morning actually on the internet somewhere. It's like Nibba, as if that makes it okay because the G's upside down. We get what you're saying. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if you say frick or fuck. Like I know what you're saying.
Right.
So that's kind of how I look at it. And I get more white people telling me that it's wrong to say certain things. So if I say like, oh, like this nigga right here, and I'm talking about my friend, they're like, oh, you use a hard R, that's offensive. I was like, don't tell me what's offensive and what's not. Like I just said, this is my friend right here. So yeah, I mean, it largely depends. But if someone needs to say it, like, oh, this guy said the word, like he said the word nigger, like just say it, because you're not saying like, oh, this fucking nigger here, fuck him.
Right.
It's completely different.
Right. So, in context, it's just a word. In context.
In my mind,
Right.
it's just a word. There's a lot of people that are very upset. And I'm a younger guy. I was born in '89, so there's a lot of things I think I missed out socially that I have no idea why there's so much pressure and weight on it.
So, one of the reasons I was really, you know, jazzed about chatting with you is that you had we have mutual friends. We were having dinner, and we were talking about that you won't eat watermelon in public.
Right. Okay. So yeah, that's just general for the stereotypes that are attributed to black people. Like I feel guilty doing it. So like the thing with watermelon in public, it's similar with things like fried chicken in public, or strawberry soda, like even grape soda. I guess that's the bigger joke, but. Like me eating it, I feel very, very guilty and self-conscious eating it or consuming these things in public, just because I feel like I'm perpetuating this stereotype. And there's plenty of people who eat it. My aunt's white cheese watermelon fucking every day. But yeah, I don't know. For some reason, I just feel bad, and that's a social thing. Like I hear it in the media. I've heard friends make the jokes and stuff like that. So.
Do you actually like what? Do you enjoy eating watermelon? I mean, do you like watermelon?
Yeah, I mean, I do enjoy eating watermelon. It's not my favorite fruit, right. But like I'll eat it for sure.
But you literally just have it in your refrigerator and eat it in your kitchen, right? I believe you expressed something similar to that, right?
Yeah, like I'll eat it in my kitchen. I don't really go out anywhere and like, oh, let me get the watermelon water. I don't buy watermelon flavored gum. I don't ask for like a fruit salad only if it has watermelon in it. Like I don't do that kind of stuff.
That's deep, man. That's like deep. That's really deep, because I don't think people really understand how deep, like that's significantly deep in terms of embedded racism. Like, you know, so I just always thought that was super interesting. Are there any other things that you feel self-conscious about being like? We live in Los Angeles. Los Angeles multicultural. You could be Persian, you could be Latin, your color, the color of your skin could pass for many, many things. Arab, I mean,
it has, yeah.
right, right. So, are you self-conscious now as a 30-year-old man that is, gone through the trials and tribulations of having to deal with this stuff, and now you're at a different place in your life and you're seeing it for what it is? Do you still feel these self-conscious things about being a man of color?
At times I do. At times I do. I feel like there's certain things that I just can't really get away with, that some white people can get away with. So I have some tattoos. I feel like that makes it more scary than a white person with tattoos, no matter what the tattoos are, just the fact that I have them. And this has happened in my interactions with the police before, where, I was arrested actually just in January. I got myself in trouble years prior. Anyway, I got pulled over. I didn't have a front license plate. Anyways, so as I was talking to the police back in January, it's 8 months ago, and one of the things they asked me after grabbing my identification and things was if I was in a gang. That's the first thing they went through is if I was in a gang, and I sat there and I was like, I don't think they ask white people if they're in a gang, up front, are you in a gang? And they were and the cops weren't white either. The cop, one was they were both of Hispanic origin, and that was very, very weird. But there's times I've been pulled over. I was in Calabasas. It was a really nice area. I worked out there. I worked in mental health, and I got off. My shift ended around 11 p.m. Anyways, I drove a really crappy car because I didn't get paid that well, and my girlfriend lived out that way. She called me. I turned around to go to her house, and the cop pulled me over and asked me, whose car is this? He didn't ask me for my license. He didn't ask me for my registration when he pulled me over. I didn't do anything illegal that would have caused me to get pulled over. I used my blinker. I was in a left turn lane. The left turn arrow turns green, and I made the turn. But he found a reason to light me up immediately, asked me whose car that was. I told him it was mine. He asked me what I was doing there. I told him that I worked in the area and I just got off and I'm headed to my girlfriend's house. And then he asked me if I had a driver's license, and I told him yes, and he asked if it was expired. I said no. And then he just told me to have a good night. I showed him my I had a work ID, a neck badge. He never asked to look at my ID. He never asked to look at my insurance. He never asked to look at my registration. He just wanted to know what a black person was doing in Calabasas at 11 p.m.
Who wasn't Snoop Doggy Dogg, who happens to live in Calabasas.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. That's, so who do you identify culturally with?
Culturally, that's hard. I really don't know. I really can't think of anybody that I culturally identify with. I know that I'm too white to be black. I know that I'm too black to be white. California, it's a little bit easier to mix with people. I have family in Missouri, and I visit them out there, and there it's largely defined. It's clearly defined who's black, who's white, and again, I don't fit into any of those sharp distinctions. And if I look on TV or whatever, it's hard for me to find anybody that I identify with. I never dress like a hip-hop guy or whatever that black look is with the saggy pants. I never did that. I'm just, I don't know.
And where I know you from is...
as an American, that's all I can say.
Where I know you from is you're essentially the only man of color when we sit at a table with, 10 people. It's you and our friend Jason occasionally when he's here from Florida.
Okay.
But other than that, that's it. How does that feel when you you must be aware of it, because we know a couple of our friends crack stupid shit all the time.
I'm aware. I'm aware of it. It's just weird for me to think of what I am. You know what I mean? So you brought up Jason. I know Jason, and Jason's similar to me. That he's a mixed guy. He's a light-skinned guy, and he teaches lacrosse or something like that. That's not a black sport. So I'm sure he gets similar stuff. But I can say that when I run into other light-skinned black people, like people who are mixed like I am, I identify what they are. You know what I mean? And I can identify with them more than I can identify with anybody who's dark skinned, like in black or white or anything else. I do get confused for other cultures though. Like I'll come into like Hispanic areas or like a Mexican restaurant or something like that. And people will speak to me in Spanish, assuming that I know Spanish and assuming that I am Latino myself. I'm not, you know. And like I go to some like gas stations or convenience stores, right? And there we have a lot of Middle Eastern people working there, and they'll speak to me in some language that I don't know, assuming that I know it, and I tell them like I don't know what you're saying. And it's funny to me. I mean, it's nice that I can mix in with all these cultures and get by, but yeah, I guess like I know what a black person is when I see one. A lot of people who are black can identify what I am. Like they know like, oh, he's mixed. A lot of white people can't identify like exactly what I am. They're just like, he has brown skin, he's something, he might be Mexican.
Right.
Yeah, so it's weird.
When you're amongst black culture,
Okay.
predominantly black surroundings, are you invited in or are you held at bay?
So there's it depends on the people, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, there's a conglomerate of black people, but it depends on the individuals there. There's a stereotype and there's this thing that, like, for light-skinned people, and that, like, you can act light-skinned, you know?
You can pass.
That's derogatory. No, it's derogatory to be said that you act light-skinned. That's to say that you're more emotional. That's to say, like, you're more likely to just tell on someone. Like, you're just a bitch, basically, is what it means. Is that, like, you're not a strong black person, you know, and you have these tendencies that are weak. And that's what I hear. That's what I hear a lot. There's also preference given to people who are darker skinned by people who have the darker skin. I notice that too. And people are referred to by like their skin tone. They're like, the light skinned brother over here, they could be talking about me. And they say like the dark skinned brother over there, you know, and depending on their own skin tone determines whether or not that person's okay or less okay. Like I've had people who didn't want to necessarily interact with me. They said like, oh, I'd rather deal with the dark skinned brother over there. It's like, okay, that's fine, but I don't understand why.
Would you actually say I don't understand why?
I've never really said that. I just acknowledge the fact that I guess they identify with that guy more. That's what I took it as.
What pisses you off the most about the obvious racism in America? For instance, you talked about no front license plate on your car. I will tell you that I have cars. I've never put a front license plate on. I've never been pulled over for it. I've never been, you know,
Sure.
I mean, I can run red lights and get in front of a cop and get away with it. So, and I'm about as white as you get. I'm like Casper the fucking Ghost. So, what is it that, like, you just go like, fuck, man, can it not be just this one? If you could change one fucking thing, as many things as there are fucked up about it, what would that one thing be?
Oh man, I don't know. There's a lot of profiling. There's definitely a lot of profiling that, like, I don't always notice it at the time, but I can look back on the situation and be like, okay, yeah, no, I was totally just being profiled. If there's one thing I could change.
The thing that just fucking irritates you the most, you know?
So the biggest problem I have, I guess I get offended that someone thinks I'm a thief or something like that. It's the biggest thing that bothers me. It's like I'll be walking down the street or I'll be walking through the grocery store and it's just women. I don't know if they do this to all men, but as I'm walking, they'll recognize me, they'll see me. I assume that because I have like dark skin, they're afraid of me. And I notice that they grab their purses and they clutch them. Or they'll grab their children and hold them closer. And I don't know if they do that to everybody, but it's something that I noticed. And it's something that really irks me because I don't think I come off as like this crazy aggressive guy when I'm walking down the street. I don't dress in a way that you think I'm going to come attack you. I'm not wearing a trench coat like a crazy person, like in Sunlit or in the fucking Sunny Valley that we live in. I'm not dressed like I look like I'm toting a gun. Like I don't have that general look about me. I don't think, and I don't have this angry face. I don't think either. So that really throws me off. And it just makes me feel like I am some kind of threat when I don't think I am, and nor do I engage in any activity that would make me that way. So just that general fear that I'm going to be aggressive or attack you or rob you or steal from you or rape you, like whatever the fear is, like that fear bothers me the most.
That's awesome. Hey, I really appreciate your time on this. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to cover?
Man, we talked about police, we talked about foods, talked about not fitting in. Yeah, no, there's nothing I could think of. I think we've covered a lot of the topics, yeah.
Okay. Anything you wanted to ask me about anything?
Actually, hang on. I got one more thing.
Sure.
I got one more thing. I actually was talking to a friend of mine about this morning. And so I was looking at people, like, and I look at their relationships and things like that. And I know I live in Southern California, specifically in Los Angeles. There's a lot of, like, interracial couples, I guess. But dating is, like, a very, very weird thing for me. Like, I have no problem necessarily going out with a girl, meeting her, we'll go hook up, whatever. That's okay. But actually dating someone, that's a little different. And there's been, like, girlfriends that I've had when I meet their families or I meet their parents, it's kind of an issue. Or they don't want me to ever meet their parents or their families because I guess they perceive it will be an issue. So just like that general dating thing, I just consider like I'm fucked all the time. You know what I mean?
And not the good kind.
Yeah, not the good kind. Like, sometimes it's the good kind, but like generally I'm like, in the long term, I'm screwed.
So you got to work harder for it.
I mean, I have to work harder for it. I don't know how much money I need to have. You know, that's another topic on what women like. But like that's a big thing. And I don't know if I want to get married or anything, but like it feels like there's a certain person, you know, they probably have a skin tone similar to mine that like would be okay for me to like be in some kind of long-term relationship with, which is weird, you know. And generally I like white women. That's just my thing. I grew up around white people. Like, they're both really white, so like that's what I'm used to, and that's like the general standard is what I had my entire life, you know. So that's just weird and problematic. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, anything you wanted to ask me about this? And
yeah, I mean, I guess, Lucas, what kind of prompted you to want to do this exactly? Was there a specific interaction you had with someone? Did you see something happen? Was it just a question you had throughout your life?
Right. Well, I was raised in a barrio next to a slum in San Diego, and I was very aware that I was white, and I've always been aware that doors open for me that wouldn't open for other people. I've said most of my life I'd be doing life without parole if I wasn't white. I got away with a lot of shit, and I suffer from white guilt for sure. There's no question about it, even though I'm aware of many, you know, truths that whites have been on the not all white people are bigots. And what I want to do with this is just sort of share that, you know, just like you feel about when people look at you, I feel that way when people of color look at me, like, there's the guy, like, because I am the atypical white guy. I am blonde hair, blue eyed, and I feel like they look at me like that guy's got a sheet in his trunk. You know what I mean? And I just want to have the conversation, an open conversation where we don't mix words, where we're not worried about offense, and that we just say the truth.
Okay.
That's my motivation.
Okay. What exactly is this white guilt that you talk about? Like, what does that feel like? What is it that you're worried about, this guilt? I'm
not worried. Because I know I've seen the oppression and I understand it. I don't understand it from it happening to me, but from a visual and intellectual standpoint, I understand it. I know that my friend Boom Boom is is targeted all the time. He's very dark skinned, and we went on a drive one time. We were trying to get someplace in 20 minutes, and I was driving, and I was running stop signs, and I was doing every crazy shit in mid traffic in Los Angeles to get to where we had to be. And he was sitting in the back, and I said, "This is what it's like to be white." And he goes like, "It's fucking awesome." So he's never had that experience. I've been in restaurants, predominantly white restaurants, when a man of color walks in, and I was sitting in the back of the restaurant, and I literally saw people look like, "Oh, there's a problem. We're at threat." Now this is in 2015. What are we doing? And we better get it the fuck over, because when you skin us, we're all the same inside. And I'm ashamed of the white behavior, particularly now more than ever in America. That it's just okay. It's not okay. Just because two black men call each other nigger doesn't mean that white people can run around using the words.
I agree with that.
And that is the number one thing. As a white man, you really understand how racist the country is, because they automatically assume that they can talk like that. And so that those words are used and thrown around and as if it doesn't matter. And so I'm and as I said, I'm about as white as you get, and they do it in front of me all the time, and it's not okay. It's just not okay. So that's why. That's my motivation, man.
Okay. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just one more thing. I was thinking about an interaction with my first girlfriend's grandfather. He's like an affluent guy. He's a hand surgeon, lives over in San Marino. And I remember I met him. He had questions. I'm good with technology, and he was asking me questions about computers. And I told him I could get him. I know this great website where you can order something. And he asked me if it was hot. I don't use the word hot. It took me a while to register. He was asking if it was stolen. But I think the fact that I'm black is like why he had that. But anyways, he's a great guy. He loved me, you know what I mean? As I think about my stepfather, he loves me and treats me with more love and respect today than he does his own children, even like despite whatever problems we had. And I think the biggest thing in a lot of my interactions with people is that they have this fear that they don't really want to have, so they really want to be proven wrong. I think like some people, not all people, and some people, like, they hear all this stuff either from their friend or whatever. They watch the media, think they're scary as shit, especially if you look on the internet. The world's about to end every moment. But like, there's some people, I think they just want to be proven wrong, and they don't want to think that the big scary black man thing is real. They want you to just be nice. You know what I mean? Like how we are. Like, I think there's a lot of people who are nice, but black people walking around, I can identify. You said, like, what does this person think if I'm the stereotypical white man, or you're the stereotypical white man? Like, what does he see? And for the most part, I see somebody like a regular person. That's what I see. It's just a regular person, but I also understand that person might be afraid of me. So I act in a way that's a little bit. I keep that in mind. Not necessarily stepping on eggshells, but I do keep in mind the fact that this guy might be afraid of me. So there's certain things like I ought to not do until I know him a little better. I don't want to startle the guy.
Do you ever use it to your advantage that they, because I'm a bigger guy, I know that people would get intimidated by me, and as I grew older, I would say like, "Oh, I know what I can do here. I can puff up," and people are going to flee.
I haven't done that. I've done that in the past. I haven't done that recently. There's times where I've done that in the past, like, because I've spent times homeless and things like that. And, I can think of times I'm in a grocery store and I wanted to take some food because I couldn't afford it. And I was like, what are you going to do about it? And they're just like cowering away, like they're scared. You know what I mean? There's nothing that they're going to do about it over a sandwich. So there's times like that, you know what I mean, drastic times. But outside of that, generally not.
Hey, I really appreciate your time, mate. You've been really honest and open, and I know you've expressed on multiple occasions you love your family. You're just being open and honest about it. This isn't to embarrass. This isn't a gotcha thing. We're not trying to hurt anybody here. We're just trying to express truth through experience, and so this isn't about hurting anybody's feelings. So I really appreciate it, Dave. Thanks so much, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.